Sorry. Sorry.
So from the city's perspective, we haven't updated the code in quite some time. So there are some basic things about the code that we'd like to be updating and sorting out, especially after a much needed legal update after the Reed decision, and that being sort of finessed with the Austin versus Reagan decision. So we need to update our code, and with that, there's a whole bunch of items that we'd like to see addressed, but really I want to start off.
We took the liberty of starting.
Well, we're right at the beginning still, but I really want to hear why the zoning commission feels that signs are problems and why you were hoping that the city would address them. So I kind of want to start with your concerns, and then I can bring up all the parts we're excited about. So.
Anyone want to jump in?
We kind of talked about some of it last time, but I feel like right now in Helena, there's very little restrictions or guidance to the point where there's some kind of nuisance signage going on. And so we would like to find a nice balance where we can decrease some of that activity while still allowing folks to get their messages across if they need to get across.
Yeah, and something that maybe we should keep in mind here is enforcement options and getting enforcement written in the code, whether or not we need an enforcement officer, all like, and you know, however that sort of works. What I will say with this sign update, I am hoping to announce an enforcement sweep soon to the public, and just sort of the city has a complaint driven process right now, but being letting everybody know that we're going to do an enforcement sweep ahead of, and hopefully drumming up interest in this process as well.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully this will be the buzz of the town this summer.
Oh boy. Yeah.
Lucky you.
Lucky us too.
Yeah.
Are there particular issues with current signs that are kind of prompting the department to want to do that? Or is it more an education thing?
Yeah. Our code currently doesn't handle temporary signs very well. We do have the power to go after the off premise, like when somebody is, for instance, there was that closeout sale that forever for home crafters, and they were just sticky disposable signs all over town. And, you know, we're well within our rights, and we did write them a letter saying we were going to fine them for every instance that we had to pick those up off their property. So thanks to Austin, or, you know, we sort of got to retain that. With Reed, it was very up in the air about whether or not we could touch any sign ever. It almost felt like, not quite, but so, you know, we can do that, but we need to update after Reed and figure out how to allow back temporary signage and make it sort of content neutral, because our code isn't very content neutral currently. One of the things that I threw out there was a 30-day 6 square foot tag, and that maybe needs to be like a 90-day tag, and however many people there are, but it was it's not in, sorry, this handout is just the city of Greenville's. It's just an extra meeting material. We just really like their proposed signage plan. But it was on that grid. So legibility of the code was something to address. We get a lot of complaints that nobody knows how to read our code, especially anybody new working in town, but even some of the current sign people aren't sure how to operate in our code. But one of the things I threw out there was a 30-day 6 square foot tag as or sign. And the 30-day isn't based on anything. I just wanted to set a temporary time limit for them. But basically, you know, campaign signs or I stand with Dr. Tom Wiener signs or any of that kind of stuff. We don't want to be regulating what we want to. We want to be regulating only in, they don't need to get a permit for it. But we want to limit the total number and we want to be able to determine whether or not it's on their property or not. And so we create a category for it. And
So this 30-day 6 square foot sign category would cover like all political signs you put in your front yard and others, like I'm having a garage sale or whatever.
Yep.
And so everyone's limited to 3 per year. Per
Oh,
your
and
house.
I was just filling the grid. So
Okay.
yeah. I mean, if you think the correct number is 6 per year, if you think it's a 90-day tag or whatever, it was just
Right.
one way of handling temporary. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know a specific number. I just want to, so this should cover all sort of temporary or political. Because like I stand with Tom Wiener, that's not really for Tom Wiener. It's not political, but it's like an ongoing thing. It's not like
Currently
it's
forever.
temporary.
Yeah, and if somebody just wants to use, if that's their only issue and they just want to keep that up all year, I mean, okay. But like, what we don't want to do is generally we want to create some mechanism for churn and turnover on these things.
So did you asked a question for the zoning commission to weigh in on why we think signs are a problem? Did you get enough? So Alyssa, you responded and anybody else did.
Right, yeah.
Do others want to weigh in? on why we want to address signs?
Well, some temporary signs, like when a business opens, it seems like that becomes their permanent sign
Right.
for a really long time, and maybe just clearing up, you know, what kind of sign they're supposed to have after a certain date. And that was brought up at the last section too.
That's for me, I feel like Alyssa, along the lines of what Alyssa said, that the way we currently regulate signs or don't, or maybe it's not that we don't regulate, but just struggle to enforce. It feels as though signs can tend to dominate the look when you drive around town. I think from my perspective, in a lot of places, it seems the signs are too big, there are too many. I think we've talked about like the flashing lights and moving content. That is too bright, maybe distracting for drivers. I would agree with I was talking about we want signs to be clear and be able to direct drivers in a safe manner. So I think there was one of the codes, the examples that you sent that I think talked about that. I have concerns just with sizing, like the allowances that we have in our code for things to be 300 square feet. That is a huge sign. I was reading these in my living room last night and was like, asked my partner to get a tape measure out. I was like, okay, how big is this? Like here to the wall? Like that is what we're allowing. And I think some of the codes, I think it was the city of Austin code actually that also has some language that ties square footage to the actual frontage on the street. I kind of liked that, and it's the lesser of the size or based on square footage. I would agree with temporary signs that kind of just seem to linger and become permanent. I think that could be cleared up. And maybe like to be generous, maybe that is just that our sign ordinance is hard to follow. I think there's always opportunity to clean things up and clarify.
I don't want to speak for the other body, but I know the Board of Adjustments who frequently gives out. So we're currently limited to 200 square feet. aggregate on a building in B2 as ends up being the upper level, because it's either 30% of the facade or 200 square feet to get into specifics.
For a
They-
freestanding or for walls?
For a wall sign. Freestanding signs. I don't know that we go up to 300 square feet. We do 150, we do 300 for wall signs in manufacturing industrial, I want to say. Um, 300 square feet for wall signage and CLM and manufacturing industrial. We're generally expecting, and that's in aggregate. What we see is pretty common is big box stores coming in at 400, 450. The new benefits building is going to be, they were just limited by, or they were just allowed to go up to by variance up to 375, I want to say, for the new one on the city mall, on the old mall site. But they're
What
just
was their
doing,
reasoning for them asking for a variance and getting it?
really just trying to scale it to the building. They're putting it 6 stories up in the air, and that actually is fairly in line with signage and visually and how that's going to feel is by the board, by just what they're dealing with.
That is a wall sign. Right? On the building.
That's, yeah. No, they would like to do 2 monument signs. They want to do 2 monument signs because they have 3 frontages and they want to do 2 entrances. So they'll have to go back to the board of adjustments for that.
So I guess I was looking at, I thought that this was right, said, this looks like it says that in manufacturing industrial and CLM, 1 freestanding sign no more than 34 feet and overall height of 300 square feet per lot, tract or parcel. It's a fixed or attached to the ground. I'm sorry, I just had it up.
That could be, I can't remember the last time I did a freestanding sign in that area. Of course, I'm not actually looking at the code, I'm looking at my notes.
The only reason that sticks out in my mind is that we had an application for a business that was going to get that, and it needed a CUP, and we attached conditions that made them use a different type of sign.
Okay.
Smaller sign.
So, so what I'm hoping to do is to take the recording from this meeting and give it to the board and get a formal statement from the Board of Adjustments back from what they're seeing the business community asking them for regularly. And I
Or
just
like,
think,
as far as like what they don't understand or what they're getting for variance.
what they're getting for variance requests. They're another body that's asked the city to revisit the sign code because they don't want to keep dealing with the same variances over and over again. They also feel like they've punched enough holes, enough of the same holes in the code over and over again, that that's actually just the standard at this point.
Which isn't the point of
Isn't
the,
regulatory certainty either for anyone.
No, and they don't treat it that way, but it does. They need to make sure that they have created a separate argument for each time that they're doing it. If they gave it to one person, that they have a new unique experience, that there's a different set of circumstances for denying it to the next person. We could also use a code just to say we have new standards and none of the old variances
Yeah.
apply.
Yeah.
But it would be good if there's reason to allow larger signs on taller buildings, for example. I mean, that makes sense to me. I don't think personally my complaints or comments of nuisance signs have to do so much with ones that are on the building. It has more to do with freestanding or shining lights and flashing lights and that sort of thing, so.
Which are usually at like intersections or
Yeah.
sort of near intersections.
And some of them are just right down the thoroughfare, yeah.
Yeah, we previously had a city attorney who wrote what was asked about whether or not the city was going to care about electronic billboard faces, and his opinion was just that he thinks they're neat.
No,
Legal.
So that was the legal opinion, and that's in writing and has been saved.
So like the ones that are
We could probably update that.
at the Cedar and Montana intersection above the headwaters tap room where they have, it kind of rotates things. Yeah,
or like if you're driving down Prospect or 11th, I think they're on both sides. There's quite a few
yeah.
as you're going. I think 1889, I think has a pretty
Right.
wild
Above-
one,
Those different things.
right?
Because you're talking about the change, like electronic change in billboard signs, which that makes you think of that one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
And you're talking about like flashing.
flashing.
lit signs, not necessarily like they've changed, and that's what the electronics are doing.
that's true. That's probably two different things.
yeah,
Yeah, one's a billboard that just changes what the billboard is. And the other
Yeah.
one is the content is like scrolling and it's like a video
Yeah.
playing. I really noticed the South Carolina Greenville one here. They have an electronic message board between any board section. I mean, one thing that's sticking out to me is there's a time frame where they have them go dark, which I appreciate. Not only considering our dark skies
yeah,
kind of commitment we have, but also just like, I mean, I've complained about the Civic Center one. It's like right across the street from a residential home. And every time I walk by that, because we walk late at night, it's just into nothing. Nobody's driving by all night long, flashing and flashing, you know?
Yeah, we've also
Yeah.
already received a complaint about the one on I-15. The new big billboard over the highway. Over.
Mhm.
That one's like brand new. They just put that up. Well, it used to be a normal billboard and now it's an electronic one.
where is it?
If you're heading, well, if you're just on I-15.
If you're
it's
heading
on,
south, it's on the right
Spike
hand side.
Custer.
No, it's in between Cedar and
Cedar.
12.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, I guess I mean, similar to our conversations about considering like an entryway
Mhm.
corridor overlay. I consider how people perceive Helena and what the character of Helena is. And
Mhm.
I think right now, like I said, we're kind of dominated by signs. I'd love to see that change.
And some pretty obnoxious ones. Yeah, I like that this has, I do like this example a lot. It has really nice content. Like, must maintain a static message for at least 12 seconds. Oh, that seems like a reasonable sort of thing to have. Must not exceed a certain percentage of the overall sign face area. The time restrictions, sign must not utilize any of the techniques prohibited by section 410(2). That sounds interesting. They might be adding on there. That's referenced twice. Have to adjust the brightness of the sign relative to outdoor ambient light. Or
Ours,
it does? Okay,
after chatting with the representative from Lamar, he would claim that ours already do. Like for those billboards, that they automatically adjust to light conditions.
Mhm.
They're-
Meaning what?
Meaning they do dim at night,
Uh,
but they're still looking for readability out to a certain distance. But really, they're just talking about pumping up the brightness during the
Mhm.
daytime so that you can also read that during from a
Right.
certain distance.
They're not talking about, worrying so much about dimmer, yeah. Okay.
Right.
So do like, so one of the, sorry, I really appreciated all of the documents and examples you sent, it was super helpful. And now I'm forgetting which one was which. There was one example you sent that talked a lot about dark skies and like the what was allowed for signs or not based on dark skies. I think it might have been 2%.
Yeah, I think that was Tucson, which I do like Greenville better now. It's not a competition.
What does Greenville say about size of freestanding? signs?
I guess, or, so another thing I liked about Austin, which it looks like Greenville does this too. Are we thinking that we will also have like sign districts? And we say like these zones fall into these sign districts?
Yeah, I haven't necessarily incorporated signage districts yet. It could be a really nice idea to differentiate because we have a lot of sort of B2 and sort of the city core that we're hoping to get operating differently and feeling differently than necessarily than Euclid or up North Montana, which is still very car driven infrastructure. And their signage serves, we're at the mall side, I think we're really hoping to have that function in more of a almost central business district-y sort of way and make it more pedestrian friendly and traversable as opposed to now, which is, all car infrastructure. So our signage requirement there might be a little bit differently than out west or up north. Generally, to make this a little bit easier, I was thinking of grouping all the residential things together than the sort of residential mix options like our RO and RU that do allow for businesses as a slightly different option, and then your commercial things just for readability.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think having overlay districts that allow different things could be really interesting. Signage district.
Are we, as with the entryway stuff, are we too late to kind of dictate what happens in the old mall site?
Yeah.
Are they already in under the wire anyway?
For the buildings, anything that we got a building permit for is it's already under construction.
There we
So,
go.
yeah. Yeah, the overlay district from 2 years ago that you guys were working on felt late then,
Yeah,
so hasn't gotten more timely.
No.
Greenville would not allow a lot of the signs we have.
We were hoping for some language carve out for ghost signs or be they authentic or faux authentic in nature that might go against the sign code, but provide some sort of value. And carve outs for murals and public arts and things like that. I don't know that Greenville addresses murals or art, public art particularly well. And which is why I give the Oregon example, which I think offers a more content neutral language. I don't really want it to be left for us to defend. It's art, you know, it when you see it.
Was it Oregon that had the like weird language about you can't pay the person?
Yeah, it's a nice workaround.
Okay, it was
Um,
confusing as I read it. I was gonna ask Kim because she's looking.
What was that?
I was gonna ask you about the language about, I think it was in the Oregon example. Find it. What was that one called?
Title
Essentially,
4 original art.
you can put up a mural, but a company couldn't pay the person to put up a mural with like their logo on it. And the idea is the way that they're distinguishing whether or not it's art or advertising is that they're hoping that nobody is just going to pay a business owner to put something up on his wall. They're saying you can't do that. So it's really up to the property owner to hire a mural artist or put it up himself.
Oh,
So you
okay.
can't pay the business owner to put the sign up, but the business owner can pay an artist.
To put a sign on his own business advertising his or her business.
No,
just
just,
like the-
that's how they're sort of distinguishing whether or not it's public art while being content neutral to actually like looking at the sign. They're just holding it to this test of whether or not the property owner is receiving compensation for having it on their
Oh.
property. And if it's on premise, so if it's advertising the property owner's own business, then it's regulated by their wall signage stuff. So it's, so they have this, they can handle it as, it's not art if somebody's paying you to put it up, and it's, your sign if it's advertising your business. So a mural is gonna fall outside of that realm.
So like the sign on the north side of the Gold Bar or the Western, there's that nice mural of a cowboy or whatever it is. That would be considered just art, a mural.
Yeah.
Because it's not advertising.
Well, doesn't it say Old Salt?
On the side.
No, that's on the south side.
Oh,
On
okay.
on the other side of the building, there's just a painting of like a cowboy
Gotcha.
and something.
And the old salt sign though, we need, we would need some sort of separate carve out for ghost signs. And or
So,
if faux ghost signs or if we could, and again, possibly tricky to do with while remaining content neutral. If there could be style guidelines or something.
Because the Greenville code, they have landmark signs, which I think are ghost signs, but they have to be approved by their historical review board, which adds another step, and then that would prohibit the faux ones for refurbishing them.
Well, I called up, other cities handle these things in strange ways. Like I called up Philadelphia because they have a famous mural arts program. And it's just a directive in a mural arts council and it's not codified at all. And that's just kind of how they handle it. It's not in their, it's not handled by code at all. If you want a mural, you go through this mural arts committee.
Huh.
That was
there's just
set up by a
nothing,
mayor at some point.
there's just nothing prohibiting it in code. They've gotten out of their way in code, so they can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, you can't put up your own mural. You have to go to them.
Oh, okay.
Say, I have a wall for you.
Right.
That's
Hmm.
cool.
Then they can kind of monopolize the artists and
Yeah.
the art that gets put up too.
Well, yeah, they've got this whole, it's like a whole rehab program. It started with, community service from graffiti artists and things like that. It was really just the mayor's directive, and then the program's only had one director. It's just been her vision the whole time
I mean,
for decades now.
don't we have lots of issues with people tagging?
Right.
We offer them an outlet.
Yeah.
Even still, I
Separate
doubt we have
conversation.
enough.
I was just noticing that Greenville does not seem to allow pole signs. Is that something that we are considering?
I doubt we'll get it passed.
To not allow pole signs?
Their freestanding signs are entrance, monument, post, or suspended, and a
That's what I
post
was
sign
looking for.
So-
yeah.
specifically says that it is low profile. And it can only be 6 feet high.
You're welcome to recommend that. It's-
Maybe we should start by size limitations is what we got.
I mean, it's interesting because if you think about what we have discussed previously about our vision, especially for downtown, and I think it bled over into our conversations around desire for sort of entryway overlay or whatever it ends up being. If you think that we are envisioning a growth pattern, a development pattern that brings buildings closer to the street, shouldn't need to have pole signs with those, because you can use these types of signs that will be closer to traffic and people passing by. Not like your building is at the back end of a parking lot and no one can see what's on the side of the building. So looking forward to that vision, these types of signs do seem to go to more align with that.
Yeah, sure. Once you brought the building out, you don't need a freestanding
Yeah.
sign.
So how do we, as a zoning commission, want to, how do we want to, I guess, permit or allow for a type of sign that is associated with a pattern of development that we would like to see sort of slowly go away?
Can we attach it directly to how far away your building is? And since we're already requiring buildings be a certain distance, then over time, then that should naturally lead that to happen. Because I'm just thinking there are a few buildings downtown that are pretty far away still from the roadway, and I don't anticipate they're gonna be, you know, torn down or replaced. They're probably gonna be around for a long time. So if you just had a blanket no pole rule in that area, they probably would have some trouble because they're pretty far back and the rest of the buildings near them are pretty far forward.
Right, yeah,
So could just,
like pole sign is allowed only if you're a certain distance setback.
So would an example of that be like Capital Tire?
I was
Is
thinking
that a
that,
pole sign that they have? Because they're set back.
Is that the one by the bagel company?
Yeah, right by the big company.
Oh, sure, across from soccer, arena. Yeah.
No,
No,
no.
This is on
Oh.
Last
The
Chance,
other bagel company?
like,
The other bagel company.
in Montana Flag.
that's what I was thinking
Yeah.
of, was
Oh.
Montana flag.
And they're no longer there in business anymore. They sold the business and moved.
I think Capital Tire has a kind of
Mhm.
pole type sign.
Point us.
But I suppose those,
I'd hate somebody to move their building back to get a sign.
Well,
but they
the-
shouldn't be
the
allowed,
zoning
right?
Code requires that they can't do that.
But they should be able to use a
Well,
monument sign or an
so-
entrance sign
so
still.
We already can't, you already can't do a freestanding sign in the downtown. So
Okay.
that battle's already been
Okay.
waged.
Never mind.
But more
And maybe
for-
that's a model for doing it, is to be replacing. If you're thinking about sign districts, why not be thinking about new design standards in places where where we're asking the building to be moved out, and then eliminating freestanding signs as you go.
So I like that approach.
Mhm.
Makes sense. 'Cause that suggests that you're also already, so if you're a pre-existing grandfathered use, you're making enough of an investment in your property that the new code or design standards are gonna kick in and require you to bring your building out toward the sidewalk, toward the street. So theoretically, it wouldn't be a huge hassle for you to replace your sign if that's.
We do have this outdoor advertising signs, and I don't know what BG, IX, and IG districts are, but it does permit signs not to exceed 35 feet in height. So there is a separate,
I think that's for their billboards, right?
I mean, outdoor advertising.
Yeah,
Must not be
City
closer.
limits or not, I don't see that it specifically dictates it as a billboard, but I don't know, that's something.
How big is Greenville, do you know? Is it comparable or a little bigger?
Let me look at
I think it's a bit bigger. They have stadiums.
it. So the population of Greenville, South Carolina is 72,095 in 2021.
Not
Is
much.
that metro? or
That's
in
that's
city
the
limits?
that's the city of Greenville. um, South Carolina. That's the population of their county is 533,000.
Oh,
Yeah,
So
good, yeah.
Well, yeah, it looks a lot more urban. based on their-
I think it is billboards. There's even a maximum number permitted within the city.
Oh, that's interesting. We can run
If we
it.
can do that.
I need to check with our state code. Currently, there's not many spaces still available for a billboard. There's one sign company that thinks they've identified one on Adam and Eve's property that's 500 feet from the surrounding ones, out on Highway 12. But I mean, like, they're hard to come by to match zoning, and we're already fairly locked up.
Mhm.
So they have to be 500 feet from each other.
Yeah.
This one requires 1,000 feet from each other.
500 feet, it's not that far if you got a sign that's
Just saying.
378 square feet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just block each other.
And
What
just
would
so-
you like from us tonight? What would be most helpful?
I guess our list of things is legal updates, doing mural and public art, and go signs. Size and locations, and the readability of the code. I don't know why I combined those. Temporary signs. And then I think enforcement is a shared issue. And then ideas you'd like us to bring forward or make sure that we're integrating in a draft. And then I think in a draft that we bring back to you, that's when we go and work out specific numbers of things. And like
Like heights and square footage.
heights, square footage, size, number of them, that kind of stuff.
And
Electronic.
theoretically, that's also when we would talk about, like, what is the sign district, like which parts of town are we talking about in each of those instances?
Okay, would you like us to identify sign districts? Potential sign districts?
I like the idea. I mean, instead of saying I guess that, because in my mind, and correct me if you're thinking of something else, in my mind, the alternative is we have different allowances or requirements for signs in every zoning district?
It's probably both.
Mhm.
So we probably do that, and then within a district, we are allowing different things from their just base zoning type. We're probably doing the whole code, and then we're creating special districts. And unlike the T districts that we have on the books, would probably generally an overlay district is a little bit more useful. It's a more permissive thing, so that your base zoning is the less permissive, and you're sort of allowing a little bit more out here. So if we're doing B2, we have capital mall in mind and how we want that to look, but then we specify a different district out west and a different district up north, where you're perhaps allowing for the big box stores to do something different or something like that.
Is that staff's preference to do it as an overlay like that?
I don't think it would be on our map, on the official zoning map, but I think that's just a useful way of talking about it.
So an overlay could be like the West Highway 12 corridor versus like the I-15 corridor. So we can specify which signs are more appropriate in those corridors.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that would be helpful, at least
Yeah.
just to know, where we're talking about, rather than just all CLM or all B2, because they can get they're definitely mixed in some places.
I think that fits better with the way we as a zoning commission look at like conditional use permits too, where we are looking at like the character of the neighborhood and where we see that neighborhood developing. So having some way to like factor that in as we're deciding what type of overlay applies instead of just the zoning district. It's helpful.
Conceivably drives with the neighborhood planning too. We will try to identify some signage districts and then have you taper them.
And I guess I'm just gonna say this and other people maybe don't agree with me, but I am very interested in hearing what the Board of Adjustments has to say in terms of the common variances they're asked for. At the same time, as a zoning commission, I don't want to be driven to make decisions just to make it more allowable for people to do what they want. I don't know that like appropriate zoning decisions are made based on variance requests. Seems backwards. I want to help them out and make things more clear and make sure that people can do what they need to do without getting a variance. But I don't want to just change things because we've granted a lot of variances. Anything else?
I think that makes, it'd be helpful to know what type of variances,
Yeah,
we're talking
yeah.
about,
If we
if
have-
it's something we don't necessarily.
Like if we don't think that like extra long driveways are a good thing, but lots of people come in and they say we want extra long driveways, I don't think that that means that we should just decide that that's what we should have. That's just a like random.
Essentially identify areas we have unintentional, perhaps ramifications from regulation that are causing variances, not
Yes.
intentional regulation
Mhm.
Yeah,
that we are getting perhaps undesirable variances. Yeah.
and if we need to have a conversation with zoning commission and board of adjustments together, I
Adjustments,
think that would be helpful too. Possibly.
We couldn't figure out advertising. We didn't want to accidentally form a quorum for that board. So I've asked them not to attend tonight and told them I would give them a recording and ask for a written response. potentially, depending on how much conversation is driven on both sides, we can. It doesn't need to be advertised in a legal sense, it needs to be publicized, and get everybody together
I would,
in a special meeting.
I think a conversation would be helpful so that we as the zoning commission could kind of share this discussion and our ideas for vision, and then also hear from them, like how we can better help address some of the issues that they're seeing pop up time and time again.
Yeah, so they regularly see garage requests for to go within 20 feet. And they have regularly voted against that. They wouldn't say we should move garages toward,
Totally making something up.
toward,
That's not a real example.
towards the street. Sure, but I mean, that is something that they vote on
Yeah,
all the
okay.
time, so I don't, but dealing with it enough times, they are all industry professionals and have developed opinions on how it affects a neighborhood, so I expect they'll have very valuable comments.
Don't forget electronic in your list, please.
So I also wanted to know, I think I split it out and it sort of printed on different sheets, and I don't know if it read that well, but so there was gonna be two different grids there. One is the shape and location and size of the sign, and then the other one was going to be the face. And how that sort of looks and sort of how it can be. Generally, I was concerned with how it was illuminated when I was making it. As a separate grid so that we can sort of fine tune it if we're allowing bigger signs in some areas that, you know, they're not necessarily all getting electric faces everywhere. Or not, or whatever. I don't know. Sorry, it's been a long day. Face type, just separating that out from size and location of the signs is all I wanted to do. Period. 1/410.
What does halo lit mean?
Sure, it's where the light is behind the letters and doesn't shine through them.
Oh, okay.
And
Like the letters are like raised on the surface.
right, yeah. So they just sort of have a glow. behind
Halo of
them.
light.
Yeah,
Here it is.
So would a reader board, would that be the electronic signs that we're kind of concerned about that are flashing or changing?
so I have that as the manual change, and then I have an electronic message display as a separate item. So reader board, I was thinking is more if you know, somebody has a special and they go out and they like change it every day, or you know,
Oh, like the
old
letters that
school
you can
letters,
change.
yeah.
Oh, okay,
The
that's
signs in front of a church.
yeah, or on an old movie theater.
So as it is now, is this is just indicating that it would still be permitted as is in the areas that it is currently what I consider a nuisance.
I'm not. I generally line this up with the current code, but some of it's, this isn't accurate to what it is currently allowed. This is as an example only.
Mhm.
I mean, some of these other examples do address things like just saying that you can't
Yeah.
have flashing, blinking, or varying light intensity signs.
Or how quickly it can change, or
Yeah.
what times it can be. And that's what I'm saying I'm interested in, is something like this with
How distracting
more,
is it?
exactly, like limiting the level of, what's the word even? maybe distracting is the word. Activity
Yeah.
a little bit on these types of signs that are up there. So even where they're just not as wild.
Nicole just left the meeting.
Okay.
So,
And can look at ourselves.
So currently, we regulate how quickly a message face can change. I will say I've never stopwatched a sign.
Mhm.
Our current complaint-driven process, somebody would need to say, hey, I stopwatched this sign and it is blinking too fast.
Well,
Like,
it's not really
there's an
easy.
enforcement hole.
Because they're videos, so that would be too rapid if there's any sort of change limit. Because if they're playing videos,
Are they playing video?
yeah.
I
Well, then,
mean,
yeah.
so if we didn't tie it to specific seconds, would we be able to
It's currently, I think
regulate or
it's 8
enforce
seconds.
flashing or blinking? Is that clear enough?
I'll look it up a little bit more and refamiliarize myself too, because I'll have to remember where that is.
Well, there's one that, I think Prospect, there's that Rocky, no, what's that bank? There's a bank and then there's 1889 and they both have similar flashing signs that play
Oh, yeah.
videos.
There's several on. One coming into town, 11th, I get it mixed up, isn't that silly? Is it
Prospect.
11th?
That's the one I'm
Prospect.
talking about too.
Whichever one goes
Yeah.
first.
Yeah,
Mhm.
there's one or two on that road that do it sometimes. They don't always have videos playing, but they rotate around and sometimes they have videos playing.
And the one on 11th in Montana at the eye care place.
Hmm,
Yeah,
mhm.
I
I don't know, it sounds right.
need to say that under my breath.
You have issues?
There are signs around town, and I don't want to single any out in this meeting that
Okay.
will, that are going to be receiving letters for being in violation of various things.
As far as brightness,
Or like nighttime.
we do have something in code currently, is that what we said? Okay.
So, our lighting ordinance is insufficient for handling this. And basically anything that measures lumens, like it's insufficient currently, aside from saying that things need to be horizontally blocked or downward facing, because lights move to LEDs, they don't measure the same on a light meter anymore. So our lumen standards don't really trigger anymore.
Interesting.
So it needs to be reevaluated. I'm a little out of date. I don't know that there are good new lumen standards that deal with LEDs very well.
How does somebody get a sign?
They will generally start with hopefully they start with a conversation with the building division about whether or not they need a sign permit to begin with. Not all signs, as far as the building division is concerned, need a sign permit. The building division cares about anchoring. They
For
will,
safety?
yes, yeah, so they will, so typically anything that's gonna be set in cement or anchored to a wall or anything like that needs a sign permit. Hopefully, if they didn't need a sign permit, but they are thinking of doing like banners or other things, the building division is asking them to apply for a sign permit anyway for zoning verification as a $0 sign permit. It doesn't end up coming through a lot. I think a lot of the sign guys around town are like, it's $0, so it's not important. So they just end up putting up banners.
But I guess, so
And banners
theoretically,
are not permitted in code.
the types of signs that we're talking about that are electronic signs, that are playing videos or blinking or flashing or very bright. Those are, at least as far as I can think of, those are probably signs that require building permit. Or
And
sign
they're-
permit.
yeah,
So would they be able to check as part of the sign permitting process? What the type of sign is that they're putting up and how bright it is intended to be from the seller?
So we will know whether or not it's getting what kind of face it's going to be. And whether or not it's going to be an electric face, and an electronic face has some extra requirements, but are generally permitted in like B2. If it's just gonna be internally illuminated or other things, generally we will, there's an accompanying electric permit. As far as brightness goes, I need to. It's not currently something that needs to go on the permit application. There's no space. We don't ask for that. And I am curious how readily available, how much they know, whether or not that's just something that they have off the box of whatever they're installing. I imagine they should have something, and then maybe there's industry standards or that we could go off of.
I have not actually looked up like purchasing an electronic sign, but I like imagine that there are sign companies that are like, that's a selling point. This is the brightest sign you can find, and
Mhm.
they probably advertise how bright it can get. But I don't actually know that.
So are you trying to get to like
Could
how
we-
bright it is? So
and-
at night, say it needs to be dim to whatever,
Or just say
or
that you
just turn it
can't,
off?
I would rather, as just general process, I would rather someone not install a sign that is gonna end up being too bright. I would rather have them find a different option so that then we don't have to get into a situation of like trying to figure out how to measure whether it's too bright or not.
Okay.
Like, if they're going to install a sign, it'd be nice if they could learn from the city up front before they buy it, that that's not a compliant option because it's gonna be too bright.
I wonder if a lot of them allow you to change the brightness though.
Okay.
So
Maybe
Maybe
they
it's
could
settings.
document that as part of their permit. I'm just trying to get us away from like post
Going around the
installation,
gun.
yeah, enforcement
Mhm.
and more toward like, can you just comply from the start because we've educated you on what the requirements are.
So when you say banners are not allowed, what do you mean by banners?
Banners are only permitted as temporary signage, and we currently to announce a specific event.
So-
Like a going out of business or grand opening or things like that in our current code, which again isn't necessarily content neutral.
So what about those kind of standing flag type things or the standing things that go up and down, which it
Inflatable
looks like
signs are not allowed.
Greenville would prohibit those because they say signs intended to flutter in the wind are not allowed. But are those allowed for us? Open or,
On a little like pole
yeah,
with a fabric
Like the ones
attached
that
to it.
the food trucks will put out.
yeah.
Yeah, generally not. If it's flag shaped, like a Montana state flag over here.
Right.
Or the US flag that I've been staring at the entire time, don't know why I didn't reference that. We generally wouldn't go after it, but if it, generally we don't go after signs unless there's a complaint. So.
But I mean, do we specifically address those kind of tall banner ones that flutter in the wind? Or are they even defined?
No, I would say they got popularized after our sign code. I would say that they're covered in our sign code under. being the following types of signs or effects as defined in this chapter are expressly prohibited: beacons, bench signs, festoons, inflatable signs, off-premise signs, portable signs, and sidewalk signs. Prohibited signs shall also include, but not necessarily be limited to, animated or changeable copy signs in residential, B1, B3, and urban renewal. And then anything that obstructs right of way. And then there's further sort of verbiage that says, you know, a sign is prohibited unless expressly permitted in this chapter.
Since you said sidewalk signs, I was just looking at their table for portable message center sandwich board signs. And the supplemental requirements say may not impede travelers on the sidewalk. And one of the example codes spelled that out a little more and said like you have to, they can only be on sidewalks of a certain width, and you have to leave 6 feet or something like that. I can't remember which one it was.
Yeah, and for our example sheet, I just stored, I just pulled it from the downtown code, which allows for them, but really it's only supplemental thing is that they just need to be packed away at night. But we allow them to be in front of the business, which is kind of technically off premise, but it's adjacent, so.
Just thinking
So
of accessibility for people passing by on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to better define how wide you have to leave.
Ellie had a comment that she wanted to make. Go ahead, Ellie.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So one thing I was going to recommend, and Mike, I apologize if you or Kyle actually have already done this, but with regard to some of these changeable copy signs and other things and statements about lumens and everything and how they can be dimmed maybe at different times of day, et cetera. I don't know if there's been outreach done with members of the sign business community to see what some of the functionality is with signs, but that might be a helpful thing to do just to gauge what these signs are capable of and how we could maybe effectively regulate them.
Good point. Thanks, Ellie.
Yeah, for sure. Happy to contribute at least something tonight for you guys.
It's not mine.
Owns that owls are actually not a great thing for many of our Native American communities, and therefore taking an owl to a public meeting or recreation is bad to do.
That's good to know.
Honestly, they don't give the best recordings either. So just FYI, Michael. It might be a little difficult for the Board of Adjustment to hear the whole discussion.
well, let's all make sure to talk real low.
Just when you want to mention certain businesses. Then just-
I've never dropped the ending of anything.
Okay, is there anything else that would be helpful to hear from us?
No, this is good. Would you be comfortable if I if I invited members of the business community to a work session?
Yeah.
I think that'd be great.
Okay. I can think of some that would be happy to come.
What are you thinking of in terms of time?
I think next month, let's plan on having another draft, another work session. That works for everybody. And I will. Write some code, try to identify some districts.
So in terms of getting feedback from Board of Adjustments, will you share that as part of that next work session, or do you plan to get that and send it to us?
Yeah, so they meet just 1 week before. Those materials might not be in the most timely manner, because they meet the first Tuesday, you guys meet the second Tuesday. So, or unless you guys want a month gap here and to re-meet in June. Or
You mean July?
Oh, sure, July, yeah. Right. I think I can get a formal statement out to you guys before the weekend or something, if I can get one done to produce one in that meeting.
Even if you want to do
But
the same
they-
thing. and
they might
record
wanna
it and
wait.
send it So we can listen to it.
Just,
It's gonna take extra time to like produce a statement or a document versus if they're having a discussion, we could just listen to it before
just
the
send you the
meeting.
recording.
Yeah.
Okay. That's
That
easy.
way at least we're informed of what came up and what they talked about.
Yeah, it's going to be an agenda item for them, so presumably they could be crafting a formal statement to you guys if they wanted to. So,
Maybe someday
they-
we'll be
they've left the
combined
door open.
into one board.
We're allowed to.
Mhm.
There's no discussion about that currently.
Cool. Should be planning board too.
We want
Well, we
meeting all
do the
together.
city county board. I don't know.
We'll know how to do it.
Yeah, that would get messy fast. It would be nice. There's a lot of overlap and expertise, and it sort of stretches us thin personnel wise. Or it has. Anybody remember like 2 years ago when there was so many holes on various boards? Your guys have always actually been fairly consistent.
But Board of Adjustments. when
But
they
Board
were
of
having
Adjustments were
trouble
down to
getting
4
quorum,
people for
yeah.
a while.
The zoning commission was pretty lean for a while.
Yeah.
They were until we got Betsy and Alyssa and Nicole.
Mhm.
Mark, it was
Yeah.
Mark, Kim and Rebecca
yeah,
for
yeah.
quite some
Mhm.
time.
Right.
So-
Well, do we have the quorum?
So all of our boards and commissions have actually been strengthened in the past, I'd say, year. The city clerk's done a really good job with the recruitment and getting the boards almost entirely full. I think we just have the alternate position vacant for zoning commission, and I think we just have a joint appointment for planning board, and because they're all full. So
So did that bill that would have required kind of consolidation of boards, did that not pass?
It just allows,
What's that?
it just allows.
Yeah,
for it.
it didn't
Oh.
require.
mhm.
It did pass, but
Oh,
it
it did,
didn't,
okay.
it didn't,
All right,
It's,
I think it
yeah, it's
passed
not a
it.
requirement.
Yeah.
okay.
I guess on that note, before we leave, are you guys anticipating any impact to zoning code in Helena as a result of anything that passed this session?
Yes.
I think
We'll look forward to
Chris
that.
is definite, Chris, Ellie, Kyle, Michael, they're still pouring over
Yeah.
the legislation since,
Mhm.
you know.
End of last
The
week.
session just closed last week.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know. I guess some stuff might come up prior, but some of that stuff, I'm looking forward to going to the MAP conference, because they're gonna have
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
their teaching sessions for us on all the changes.
when is that?
August, so. Which,
Actually, it's September, the week of like the 18th or something.
it's
yeah,
later this
yeah,
year.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
right. It's usually in August.
So we wouldn't see those proposed changes until like next year, probably.
Unless they're otherwise stated in the, unless it's otherwise stated in the bill legislation, it's not effective until October 1st. But we're starting to look over the ones that were passed and have gone to the governor's desk either for signing or have already been signed. So we'll be bringing back Lucy Merle Gangler to assist with that since she's a subdivision guru.
Yes. Yep. Cool.
Does it just get tinkered every session? Subdivision?
Not as much as this last session. I want to say that that is partly DEQ's fault, sorry.
Well, they really got into zoning this past year.
Yeah.
We made some national headlines. In planning circles.
Yeah,
I
I mean, there was
think.
the land use work group in the interim, so that pushed a lot of this stuff with like league and Mango. that came up with this last session.
Did they track it pretty closely or did they go off quite a bit?
Oh, you would have to ask Kelly. Or Ellie probably isn't there. as well.
I mean, there was a lot of bills, MAP sent us pretty regular updates once or twice a week throughout the session, so I felt informed.
There was also a housing task force that fed into some of the subdivision stuff and a lot of the zoning stuff as well.
That was what I was thinking you were involved with, yeah.
Sense that zoning is causing us to have so many problems
Maybe in some places.
until there's a gravel pit that was in
Yeah, it's really been my impression that zoning's been out of the way in Helena.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that
You
was
know.
well recognized in some of the conversations.
Yeah, this brought to my attention a little bit more fine detail for some of the other cities around Montana. that,
Yeah.
We're definitely more in the way. Yeah. I was wondering, I was just like, oh, we already do all this stuff. This is fine.
Yeah, there's a lot of places where there's true single family zoning in Montana. right?
Yeah, and minimum lot sizes and all the rest of it that goes with it.
Okay. Anything else for work session topics?
So June 13th, is that a work session and a session or?
Do we have any CUPs or zone change applications? None that I'm aware of.
Been quiet.
It has been, it's been noisier on Board of Adjustments. Last year was you guys were opposites,
Everyone's waiting for the dust to settle.
could be.
Maybe.
We had a couple of things to kick off the year, a couple of small things, I guess. We had a multifamily CUP and a zone change for
Harrison.
Harrison.
I was wondering if interest rates were kind of crashing the party a little bit.
Okay. Does the 13th for a work session work for everyone who's here?
Yep.
I will try to remember that it's at 5.
I'll send out,
It's okay.
I'll send out calendar reminders to everyone a bit closer. It's been a little crazy because I've been getting ready to be out for a week, so.
Good. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks for all the research.
Thank you,
Thank
Ellie.
guys. Thank you all.
Bye, Ellie.
Bye.